Hi, I'm Maria from theteacherschool.com, and I wanted to present to you today 3 activities for kindergartners. Now, there are many activities you could do with kindergartners, and it's the hope that kindergartners will get a diversity of activities to help them build their number sense. But these are 3 activities that I like to use that really get at challenges I see amongst kindergartners. So the 3 activities are count and dump. I got this from Kathy Richardson's book, Developing Number Concepts. Patterns, matching patterns, naming and matching patterns. And the third activity, and I don't have the dominoes with me right this second, is going to be domino matching. And the focus of domino matching is to solidify subitizing skills. So these are 3 things you can do to support your kinders, and I hope you enjoy. The first activity is called Count and Dump, and again, I took it from Kathy Richardson's Developing Number Concepts number 1. It is not my activity, but I find it to be really useful. One of the challenges I see younger students, particularly kindergartners, I just dropped it, of course. What I see kindergartners have is that when they are counting out items, they can kind of jump the gun when they're counting, and their one-to-one correspondence sort of suffers. So what I mean by that is, instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and giving each block a name, increasing as we add one more, I can see students doing this 1, 2, or taking them all together and naming it 1. And what we really want to do is we want to focus on giving each one a name, one-to-one correspondence. So what I like to do is do this activity called Count and Dump. You start with a number of blocks, Legos, whatever, in a cup. It's real low supply kind of game. And all you're going to do is fill that with the cup. We don't want the Blue Jays. We want the A's. Fill it with the cup, and are you ready? Dump it. Oops, dump all of them. Oh, they're stuck in here. Okay. So the count part is each time they're going to pick up 1 block each time and count as they drop it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you really want to make sure students are doing 1 block at a time. And that's really important. That's a key skill we really want to solidify, because I noticed sometimes that if students don't have that one-to-one, things get real gummed up in the works as they get older. So now you're going to dump it. One of the things that I always ask younger kids is, how many are there now, right? And the idea is that we haven't added any, we haven't taken any away, so the number should actually be the same. But that's something for students to explore. If they're not quite sure, we can just count them again. So, oops, not all at once. We want to make sure we're doing 1 at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Still 7. And you could do that a few times with one set of, in this case, 7. And repeat this exercise with varying numbers. This is a great way also for you to move to numbers beyond 10 and practice counting those as well. Okay, so that is Count and Dump. Thank you, Kathy Richardson. Our next activity uses Unifix Cubes. If you don't have Unifix Cubes, it's a little harder. You could use Legos. Anything that kind of interlocks. So what this activity is about is really naming, identifying, and repeating, creating patterns. So it's just really practice with patterns. And what I like to do is just start with naming a pattern. Does this have a pattern? And students can say yes, and they might say that it's yellow, white, white, yellow, white, white, yellow, white, white. And my rule of thumb is always that it has to be repeated 3 times to be considered a pattern. So this is a pattern because it's repeated 3 times. They also might say white, white, yellow, also valid. So once a student has but is able to identify that something is a pattern, you might throw them something like this where it has a pattern in it but doesn't have a pattern throughout. So for example, this yellow, white, yellow, white, yellow, white does make a pattern on the inside within those blocks, but not in the whole thing. And then you can graduate to recreating patterns. And actually, this could be this activities can happen concurrently. You want to give them blocks and have them practice recreating patterns. And then the last step would be to create their own patterns. And that's where you would just give them a bunch of different whatevers to make into a pattern. Interlocking blocks help, but they don't necessarily have to be interlocking blocks. It could be coins, it could be beans, it could be beads of different colors. You just really want them to practice identifying and recreating patterns. The third activity, I don't have the dominoes with me, but in the third activity, I'm going to model how I use dominoes to practice subitizing. So I'm going to go into deeper with the subitizing as I switch my camera to the dominoes, but it's a great way to practice that very core skill of identifying the number of something by sight without having to count it. Okay, I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you soon. So earlier when I introduced the domino parking lot game, we talked about the importance of subitizing. If you haven't checked out that video, it's a good one. But here we're going to talk about subitizing. So subitizing is just the ability that we all have to look at this and go 4 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. When I say we all, I mean adults. Kids actually have to practice this and learn it, and it's a super important skill for number sense and number awareness. And I think it's something we sort of take for granted, like, oh, I know that's 12 because I did 6 and 6 in my head. But little ones would count each and every single one. And we want them to really be able to look at this and say 6. So if you have a student who is struggling with subitizing, one activity that I really like to do is just to have them make a long chain where they match and they name and match the numbers. So for example, you start with 0 and 1, and you have them find another 1, and they match this end with the 1, and then they take this, and you also, again, I'm saying name and match. So you really want them to be able to say out loud, get as many senses going as possible. This is 1, and now we need to find a match for, what's this? 6. Okay, oh, look, this looks just like it. So now I know it's a 6. 6 and 6. And I need to find another match. 6 and 3, right? And again, the more kids play this, the more they're just going to instantly recognize those numbers. And again, super useful for playing dominoes, for playing domino parking lot. And just anytime a kid looks at a die, it's a super useful skill. So try it out. Let me know how it goes.